I want to talk about 2022. Events change things. Not a week goes by on radio that I don't say that. Events change things. And I don't think you can speculate about 2024 right now because you got to get through 2022. And even with 2022, events change things. We are in the midst of a global pandemic with a resurgent virus, an incompetent and distracted federal government. We've got people who are divided within the Republican Party now between Donald Trump and non-Donald Trump. You've got a left that is divided between those who think they should be more inclusive of people who disagree with them and those who want full-bore socialism. You've got Donald Trump, who could be dead in 2 years. At his age, you never know. He's at the mortality tables. He's not a paragon of perfect health. Events change things. You can't predict the future. You don't know what's going to happen. But I think that Brian Kemp comes out of this looking pretty good. I think a lot of people thinking Brian Kemp is going to have a primary challenge in 2 years. The president's going to campaign against him. Who's going to pay for the president's arena? Who's going to pay for the giant venue? The president's not going to go to Podunk Barbecue Joint in South Georgia. He wants to go to a big city and draw a big crowd because that's what Donald Trump does. And who's going to pay for it in 2 years? The campaign against Brian Kemp? Well, that guy, is going to cover the cost of it? Really? Well, then how's he going to pay money for the ad campaign? Maybe they'll justify it as worth it. But events change things. The number of people who recoiled by what they saw on Wednesday, who were Trump supporters, who are skittish now, just a little bit more hesitant of, dear God, what was this? Did he not know this would happen? Here's Brian Kemp, who hasn't picked a fight with the president. In fact, the president condemned him for reopening the state of Georgia sooner than he thought Brian Kemp should have. And Kemp held on. Kemp defied the president. Kemp decided he was going to do what he needed to do despite criticism from the president, from Stacey Abrams, from the media. Remember the Atlantic story, Georgia's experiment in human sacrifice? And yet he did really well. The virus didn't start surging until people ignored him and went on their Memorial Day holidays and then started rioting through Atlanta. He, as governor, has taken a pragmatic approach that the government is not going to force you to wear a mask, but he's going to fly around the state and go everywhere and tell you you should wear a mask. He's not going to shut down your business if you think it's essential. He's going to tell you if you think it's essential, it's not the role of government to tell you your business, that is your livelihood, is not essential. Keep it open, but here's what you got to do to keep everybody safe. Close down for 1 month to allow hospitals to build up capacity to handle any surge that might come, and then reopen the state ahead of everybody else. And Georgia's economic footing is now better than everybody else, and he's got a story to tell and sell and cry more libs, and he wasn't loyal to me, and he needs to be defeated, and I'm going to come defeat him after I encouraged a riot in Washington. Donald Trump might not sell so well in 2 years. Events change things. Kelly Loeffler could, for 2 years, travel the state, go on a listening tour, explain who she really is, have people authentically connect to her over the next 2 years, and run again against Warnock and win. Events change things. Warnock could go around the state, connect with conservatives, explain that the views from the black church theologically are sound different, even though they mean the same thing. And you know what? You should have a pastor like him who can connect across races in the Senate. And maybe you'll have some white Republican say, you know what? He's not that bad. I doubt that's going to happen. But events change things. In 4 years, you may have Ron DeSantis unite Republicans and say, look, I, as governor, was pooped upon by the media, condemned by a media that wanted to give Andrew Cuomo a pass. I actually can win. I've proven it. Run me for president, and guess what? He might win. People might say, yeah, I'm done with Trump. Events change things. I don't think you can predict 4 years from now what's going to happen. People keep saying, who you're backing? Are you backing Hawley? Are you backing Cruz? Are you backing Cotton? Are you backing Haley? I'm friends with almost all of them. Hawley and I have had some issues, but I actually like the guy. But I think the nominee is going to be someone we're not even talking about. Maybe Kristi Noem, maybe a Ron DeSantis, maybe a Doug Ducey, maybe a Brian Kemp, although the only time Brian Kemp has ever cussed at me The only time, literally, the only time Brian Kemp has ever uttered a profanity at me is I joked with him about running for president, and he was having none of it. You won't see him run, but maybe it's somebody we're not thinking of. I think events change things. I think that this is not a static situation. And I will tell you that one of the things that will change are some of the laws in Georgia moving forward on elections. Although the Speaker of the House, David Ralston, says he's opposed to getting rid of no excuse absentee voting. And I think you should have to have an excused absentee vote, but I will say this, and I hope someone tells the Speaker I said this. I think if the Speaker can figure out a way to ensure ballot integrity by aligning voter ID with absentee ballots, then yeah, no excuse absentee balloting. I think that would be a good compromise. I think there's a path forward for the Republicans in Georgia. I think it's way harder for the Democrats in Georgia than they think. Yes, the Democrats had a good night on Tuesday. They picked up 2 seats. Jon Ossoff gets 6 years in Washington. And maybe the demographics in Georgia change enough and the GOP never gets a clue enough on what to do about those demographic changes that Jon Ossoff becomes a senator for the next 50 years. He's young enough, he could. Ugh. But events change things. We are in the middle of a political realignment in the United States of America, and that's why things are so tumultuous right now. Every time the United States of America has gone through a political realignment, that's what happens. It is the physics of a realignment. In the same way that when cold air and hot air pass through, you can get thunder, lightning, thunderstorms, and rain. When classes of people who have been aligned in certain ways begin to unalign and move about in different ways, you get turbulence, you get thunder, you get lightning, you get rain. When a party splits apart, you get a fission explosion. We're in a great realignment in this country, and that's part of what's going on here. Black and Hispanic voters are trending out of the Democratic Party very slowly as the Democratic Party becomes increasingly secular and white and rich. Working class voters who have long been in the Democratic Party are moving into a Republican Party, with a Republican Party that doesn't really understand them and isn't really sure that they really are committed to the party, because the party has been committed to the Chamber of Commerce. And why are these people coming in and trying to change things? It's very uncomfortable for the Republicans right now. Some of them want to disparage and dismiss the base Trump supporters who are there because their guy actually got them and understood that a country that is growing economically and has moved beyond their needs in the economy and the economic output of the nation wanted to find a way to plug them back in and give them a job, if not restore their job. And a lot of Republicans are like, what the hell? Democrats, of course, found it very disparaging and didn't realize that these people were moving to Donald Trump not because they were racist, but because they just wanted to work. When black and Hispanic voters shifted towards the Republicans in November, the New York Times ran stories trying to explain it all, and their explanation was that black men were moving to Donald Trump because of the toxic masculinity displayed in rap music, and Hispanics were moving to Donald Trump because they'd immigrated from countries with strong men, and they really liked tyrants. White people mansplaining ethnicity. The people who say Latinx without irony. If you actually asked black men and Hispanics why they were moving to Donald Trump, it was because they wanted a job. The Republican Party that for so long has been the party of first the Episcopalian Church at prayer and now the Fortune 500 at work, is a party that is having to realize that a lot of people have moved into its party because the Democrats are also competing to be the Fortune 500 at work and giving the Fortune 500 protections against the little guy, and the little guy just wants to compete. The little guy wants the opportunity to become the big guy, and the Democrats are advancing socialist policies that ensure the little guy will be comfortable being the little guy and will never have a chance to compete, and it's antithetical to the American experience and the American dream, where people believe they can come here as a little guy and become the big guy, David picking off Goliath, and both parties have for a long time been subsidizing and propping up Goliath and protecting him from David. And here comes Donald Trump, who's perfectly willing to take the side of David and cast the stone that takes out Goliath, and it has been tumultuous. Particularly when Donald Trump was a guy who didn't particularly know what he was doing, but he knew what to say to get people on his side. And you had Democrats for 4 or 5 years call him a racist and a bigot, and he actually had a lot of black and Hispanic voters gravitate towards him, and the Democrats couldn't process it because they believed they're spinning caricature of the guy. Both parties have missed this realignment, but the realignment is happening.